Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight. And I'm so used to saying along with my co-host, but she's on special assignment for work. And so Rhonda, if she's on tonight, she will be on briefly just to pop in and say hello. We have a great show, a great lineup of guests. And tonight we also are announcing the finalists for this year's Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And so we'll be doing that at around 8:30. We'll be announcing them in the 15 categories. And you'll get to see if any of your favorites made the first round of elimination, so to speak. And then we'll be voting for the winners later on. But I'm going to bring on our first guest, and I think that's it for announcements. I have to try to think of everything because Rhonda's not here and she normally does the duty. And I'm going to check our page just to make sure that I'm on the right thing so I can check comments or see who's logged in. And before I bring on the first guest, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm on because it didn't come up like I wanted it to. And I want to make sure that I can check comments and everything. There we go. Okay. So we have our first guest, and she has a very interesting book, and her name is Mia Mask. And I just in reading about her, she has a very interesting bio, but she's also a professor of film, and her book is called Black Rodeo, a history of the African American Western, and she has a copy of the cover of the book right with her there. And I thought that was an intriguing cover. And I don't know, Mia, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I don't know, I'm based in Houston. So we have the big rodeo every year that's like the Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's a 3-week long thing where cowboys come from all over, and they have Western rodeo. You buy Western gear. You can ride a horse. They have a petting zoo. They have rides, like they have like a carnival. It's a huge operation. And so it fits right in because it just ended recently. It lasts for I think it lasts a month, either 3 weeks or a month. And then they have entertainment as well. So it's a huge operation. And we've had a couple of other guests that did things with the Westerns, but not what you are focused on. So tell us a little bit about you being a professor of film and how that led you to write your book about the Black Western.
Thank you for the question. So I have long been an admirer of and a student of the career of Sidney Poitier. And so I had been looking at his films and thinking about his work and his trajectory in Hollywood and British films, and came across a film that he directed in 1972, Buck and the Preacher.
Yes, with him, and was Fred Williamson in there? Who was the co-host?
Along with co-star was Harry Belafonte.
Harry Belafonte, that's who it was.
Yes.
Okay.
And not only was he his co-star, they co-produced that film and raised the money for that film. It was a long-term project. They had always wanted to make a Western together. They were very close friends. They had really
Mhm.
kind of grown up together in film and in the media, and were active, obviously, as everyone knows, in the civil rights movement together. But they had for many years wanted to make a Western. And so they finally made one together. And I discovered this when I discovered the film, there really wasn't very much written about it. No one was talking about it. It was kind of a forgotten film in some ways because it emerged also at a time when blaxploitation or black action films were on the rise. This is 1971, 1972. And so I was really intrigued and I began researching the film. I was able to attend a conference, the Sidney Poitier International Conference and Film Festival in Nassau, Bahamas. And we were able to have Mr. Poitier sort of Skype in for a phone call and ask him questions, all the conference participants. And I was one person who wanted to ask him, of all the films you've made, which was your favorite? And he said that Buck and the Preacher was his favorite film. And so, of course, I was over the moon. And that was part of what led me to want to study this film as a part of film culture, part of African American and Afro Caribbean film culture, with a star like Poitier and a co-star like Harry Belafonte. And then as his directorial debut. So I was interested in it on many levels, really coming out of from it from the standpoint of film culture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for people who may not know, they were both from the Caribbean.
Yes.
And the theme song of Buck and the Preacher was popularized for a while. It's one of those tunes, catchy tunes that they had for it. I've never seen the movie all the way through. I just know the theme song and that it was him, and I was getting him Harry Belafonte mixed up with Fred Williams because they had a similar look and countenance in some films. Fred
Yeah,
Williams and
and
Harry Belafonte.
we should also mention that it stars Ruby Dee. I would be remiss if I
Okay.
didn't also
Okay. See, I
mention that
didn't even know that because I've never seen the movie.
oh no,
I
you
always
have to
see,
watch it this weekend from start to
yeah,
finish.
it might be on Tubi. You know, Tubi has a lot of the old black films or just old films, period.
Well, and it's on Amazon. You can find it in a lot of places now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's interesting that that film led you in that direction
Yes.
to
Yes.
study Westerns. And Sidney Poitier, he really was an amazing actor. This I didn't read his full bio, but I know he really kind of wandered, stumbled into acting. It wasn't something that he sought out per se. When he got to America, I think he was washing dishes or something, and then he just like it was just like fate that he did that. But he was so indicative. He had a lot of pressure just because he was like the one actor, the one black actor in the time that got so many different roles, and he always had to be extremely dignified. Uh, but it didn't seem like a stretch for him. But he really um, had a lot of range as an actor because he was in some just amazing films.
He was. And then I realized upon looking at that film that there were other actors, even before Poitier, who were featured in Westerns, like Woody Strode. So as early as 1960, Woody Strode appeared in Sergeant Rutledge, which had been directed by John Ford, in which Strode plays a cavalry officer who is falsely accused of assault and murder and is ultimately defended by one of his superior officers. It's a courtroom drama told in a series of flashbacks. And then I went on to find the Jim Brown Westerns and then the Fred Williamson Westerns. So it started with Poitier, but led me to find a number of other actors who had worked in the genre and had made inroads even before Poitier. So it was quite the journey, and there are a lot of really interesting films and fun films and action and adventure films to discover in the book and for folks to watch.
Yeah, there was also a film that called The Cowboys. I don't know if you stumbled across this one. It was a John Wayne movie, but there was a black actor in it that played a prominent role. I can't call his name. But he was in other movies, and he was really good in that movie. He has one of those voices that's really distinctive. So his voice, you would know his voice in any film he was in. I just can't call his name right now. And then um, Lou Rawls played a cowboy in an episode of The Big Valley. So and he actually sang like he wasn't a singer, he was a cowboy, but in a scene in it, he sang um in that show. So they were there. That it's not a lot, but especially in the older in like the old films, but they're there.
Well, there actually are more films than you would imagine. So Jim Brown made no fewer than three: Rio Concho, 100 Rifles, and El Condor. Jim Brown, sorry, Fred Williamson also had a trilogy of films around the Charlie character, and made Westerns even beyond the sort of initial three. And then Woody Strode was in Sergeant Rutledge, but also many other Western films. He was even in spaghetti Westerns, right? And he was in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, among other films.
Okay.
Then you go on, and obviously there are comedies. I don't write about Blazing Saddles in my book because so much has already been written about it, but many people are familiar with the Send Up, the comedy Blazing Saddles. And there are, also films with earlier Westerns. Like, so Sidney Poitier's first Western was actually a 1966 film titled, in which he stars with James Garner. The title will come to me in a second, but he stars with B.B. Anderson and James Garner. And he makes that film, and then in 72 he'll come back to the Western and actually direct Buck and the Preacher. So there are actually many more Westerns. Duel at Diablo is the sorry, I was blanking on that title for a second. Duel at Diablo
Okay.
with James Garner and Sidney Poitier, 1966. So you actually have quite a catalog of films even before the 70s. And then
Okay.
yeah, and then in the 70s you'll have the Fred Williamson Westerns. In the 80s you begin to see even made for TV movies like Buffalo Soldier with Danny Glover. And then you have a little bit of a hiatus in the 80s, but you'll have some other films then emerging later on in the 90s and in the early and then in the 2000s. So we begin to get into Django Unchained. We begin to get into The Harder They Fall. More recently, Concrete
Right.
Cowboy, Harder They Fall. So there's a lot of material out there.
And Danny Glover was also played a prominent role in the um TV series Lonesome Dove.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah, so and that's
absolutely.
one of my favorite like Western series. I've seen it multiple times. I
Okay.
just really, really like it. I'm not really into Westerns per se. Um, I think my husband, he's older than me. He's seen every Western there is. So all those movies you named, he would know. He would know 'em. But there's certain ones that I like. It has to have a certain hook or some theme that I like. And Lonesome Dove, I just really like
Okay.
the relationship between the main characters. I
Yes.
just
Yeah.
thought it was really good. And they showed up. And it was the executive director was um she was the lady that uh, was the manager of the Jacksons. Do you know what I'm talking about? Suzanne DePaz.
Okay. Oh, yes. Yes. Susan. Yes.
She's
Okay.
the
Yes.
executive
Mm-hmm.
director of the Lonesome Dove series. And I don't know how that came about, but I thought that
Yes.
was really interesting factoid when I learned about it.
And then we don't want to forget we don't want to forget Thomasine and Bushrod, which starred Lynette McGee. as well. I think sometimes women are not as interested in the Western because they feel like it's a very male genre. But what you see
Mhm.
about what you discover in many of these African American themed Westerns is that they're really trying to decolonize the genre and open it up and show that it's much more expansive, that there are absolutely African Americans on the frontier, and that really we need to rethink our understanding and notion of who cowboys were. We really need to rethink and reframe and reconsider who we think sort of established these townships and did labor on these ranches. So it's a steep learning curve, and it's kind of fun to explore this learning curve with the Westerns as part of the folklore. Of course, they're cinematic folklore, not actual history, but still fun to explore nonetheless, and lead you right into contemporary Western films.
Yeah, and the thing I was just thinking about it, on those Western films, the black characters, they weren't stereotypical
No, not at
at all.
all.
I mean, they were really cowboys, you know.
Right. And challenging the status quo and
Yes.
challenging ideas about masculinity, challenging ideas about what Black men and women could and couldn't do. So there were a lot of ways in which those films bucked up against like the larger sort of social status quo as well as the status quo in the film industry. So even Sidney Poitier in making Buck and the Preacher did a number of things. Like he worked really hard to hire technicians and craftspeople and artists on set who were people of color, which was very hard to do because the unions didn't really have many union card members who were of color. And so he found a workaround and a way to train technicians and craftspeople to work in the film industry. So there's a lot of history and a lot of ways in which those films were bucking the system, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. And another film that Sidney Poitier was in, it wasn't really a Western. It was set in the 1800s, but um, Band of Angels. Are you familiar with that
Yes.
film?
Yes, yes.
Where he,
Raoul Walsh directed that
yes,
film. And
yes,
it also stars Yvonne DiCarlo
yes.
and
Hmm. Clark Gable.
Clark Gable. Yes,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
You
I
like
haven't
that
seen it
film?
recently, but I do like that film.
Okay, now why do you like that film?
I don't know. The Yvonne DiCarlo plays you know, she's a black woman, but she doesn't know it. She finds out that she has black blood,
Ancestry, yes.
and then that becomes a major problem. But I like Sidney Poitier because he was very independent in
Yes.
that film. And also there was a woman that played Clark Gable's. It wasn't really his maid, it was more of his assistant, but
Okay.
she like ran things. So I really liked just the depictions. And so some of the older films, they just really they stretch the boundaries of what you would think that they were doing in terms of roles of black people during that time.
Some of them, but many of them do capitulate too. I mean, there's a lot of there's some definitely nuance, and it was a different time. We have to consider the Hays Code, right? So many of those films were restricted by the Hays Production Code, which was a code of um, do's and don'ts, prescriptive code of what could and could not be shown in American movies. This was before the rating system was put in place, the current rating system. And what happened is the way that the industry self-regulated or prevented the government from stepping in and imposing sanctions or ratings on their film were to create this production code administration that required that scripts be reviewed, content be reviewed, and oftentimes censored, altered, changed in ways that would comply with this list of do's and don'ts that included everything from no, representation of alcoholism or drug use or drug abuse, no references to white slavery, no interracial relationships or miscegenation of any form. And what's so interesting about that is that these restrictions were quite particular and sometimes nuanced in the way that they were enforced. Obviously, there were films that got around those enforcements. You know, some romantic comedies were able to use in the innuendo and humor to get around some of them. But in terms of, for example, the restriction around interracial relationships, or what what used to be called miscegenation, right, and interracial dating, it was not only restricted to relationships per se being shown on screen, but even physical intimacy of any kind. So that included even the hand holding of, for example, Bilbo Jangles Robinson with little itty bitty Shirley Temple. So there were Southern theaters that objected to the intimacy or the hand holding of them in dance scenes because they felt that that violated the code of interracial connection or touching or intimacy. And so interesting, because here he was kind of a servant figure and a kind of uncle to her, and
Right.
yet
He was completely asexual.
completely. There's nothing inappropriate about
No.
those interactions. They may be somewhat stereotypical, but
Yes.
there was nothing certainly sort of romantically inappropriate. But so the Hayes Production Code really restricted in many ways what could and couldn't be shown, and so there were a lot of restrictions put on movies back then.
Yeah. Some people are commenting that they like westerns and things like that on the chat.
Oh,
Um,
they should tell us which westerns they like, which westerns they've seen. Give
okay,
us
well,
some shout outs for some of the westerns we're talking about.
okay, well, if you all would like to comment on a particular film that you like, feel free to do that.
Mhm.
When you were talking about the inappropriate touching and that, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came to my mind with Sidney Poitier, because that was like a major thing at the time, from me reading about just how, and they never kissed in the mouth.
Right. What's so interesting about that film too is that it's also, to your point about Bilbo Jangles Robinson being very asexual. You know, one of the many, there were many criticisms put, to Sidney Poitier about his career. One of which was that he was too assimilationist and too accommodationist, and allowed his roles to be too asexual. That there wasn't enough sexual machismo or charisma there. I think that there are certainly films that defy that convention, and chief among them would be something like Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun, the
Mhm.
stage play as well as the cinematic adaptation, and others. But yeah, one of the um, rejoinders to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was 100 Rifles, in which Raquel Welch and Jim Brown have an on-screen romance and an on-screen love affair that is depicted intimately, as much as it could have been in 1969. And certainly they have a bedroom scene, is what I'm implying.
Oh, okay.
That was much more risque for the time than was Sidney Poitier's rather tame relationship with Catherine Houghton in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So what I'm saying is, Poitier, there were some things Poitier couldn't do, but a year or two later, that couldn't be shown in 1967. But by the time we get to say 1969 and we get to 100 Rifles, there's enough demand for the old ideas to be jettisoned, to be pushed, to be pushed back, that we begin to see, the Hays Code demise and more risque content. There's also other things happening in the industry, but that was also a social, so part of a social movement.
Oh, somebody, Lydia asked the name of the movie with Yvonne DiCarlo. That was a Band of Angels, and
Right.
that
Band of
one
Angels.
has Clark Gable in it too. Also, another Sidney Poitier, and this is not a Western, but another film of his where he was asexual with a white female was A Patch of Blue. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yes,
About
yes.
a young lady who's blind, and he meets her in a park. Her mother is just really an avowed racist, but she falls in love with Sidney Poitier's character because he's so kind to her, and when she's lived, but she doesn't know he's black until her mother spills the beans on that in an aggressive and mean way. Now she kisses him, and I've seen that recently because it was on Turner Classic Movies. Not
Hmm.
in the last year, I've seen it.
Hmm. Hmm.
She kisses him, but I can't remember if she kisses him on the lips. And that was before Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yes. And so you would see again, as you say, it's very gentle, it's very much a peck.
Yes,
It's not
yes,
very lustful, as is,
not at
the best
all.
way to
And he
describe
just
it.
treats
So
her
you
as
could
like a
you
friend.
yeah, so what's happening in the late 1950s and early 1960s is the American film industry is also struggling financially because there are a few things that have happened. There's been the Paramount decision, right? Ending the vertical integration of the studios so that you can no longer have um, production, exhibition, and distribution all through, controlled through one company. Deals a kind of financial blow to them. You begin to have the importation of European art films, which are much more risque, much more sexual, more liberal in their
Yeah.
content. So that's giving Hollywood a run for its money. You also have the advent of television in 1948, which by 1950, in the 1950s, you have many more televisions in people's homes, so they're not going to the movies as much. So gradually in the 60s, you begin to see the waning of the Hays Code as the industry says, wow, we better make this content appeal to young people, appeal to folks who are staying at home, and show them content that they're not going to see on TV. So you begin to see a gradual repeal of Hays Code restrictions. You're absolutely right.
Okay, because A Patch of Blue was in black and white.
Yeah.
And Guess Who's
Yeah.
Coming to Dinner was in color,
Right, but you had color. But there were some films that were still being made in
made
black
in
and
black and
white.
white. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and you certainly have, as you say, you do have intimacy in the 1960s between Asian Americans and African Americans and African Americans and white Americans. You definitely have some of that. It's just when we're talking about it's absolute restriction. That would certainly have been in the 30s and 40s in Hollywood.
Right. Now, someone commented, A Patch of Blue, Tony Benita, she watches the show every week almost. She said, yes, she kissed him on the lips. It was a peck. And it's true. It was really
Yeah,
quick. She said, because it was so quick. Yeah, if
right.
you blinked, you would have missed it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, we are at the end.
Very
It was
chaste
very
relationship.
chaste. It was very hands, like their bodies never touched really. I mean, and he
Exactly.
was like, it was almost like she was his student, or it was that kind of
Yeah.
relationship.
A
But
very
she,
chaste relationship.
yeah,
Certainly, nothing we would consider sexual, right? Yeah.
no, and she actually said she wanted to make love with him in the
Yeah.
movie. She says that, and so that I'm sure that was at the time. I'm sure that was something that was made people's jaws drop. Back then.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
But it's 1967 that Poirier begins to have a real like shift, as you say, not just with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, but even more importantly with In the Heat of the Night, right? Because
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
In the Heat of the Night with Rod Steiger. I
yeah.
mean, that's a
That
film
was
that
amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Great performances.
Mhm.
Norman Jewison directs that, and it's just a watershed film. And Sidney Poitier's brand, sort of his masculinity, is almost rebranded in with that film, right? He shows a totally different side of himself and gets to speak truth to power in many ways in that film.
He does. No romance in there with him though. It's him,
No. But
him.
those are not that's not the only litmus test, right? I
I
mean,
know, I
of his
know. I just
masculinity.
it was
There's some
him
other litmus tests
when
there.
he slaps that old white man. That was just unheard of.
Yes, exactly. It was called the slap heard round the world. So
Yes,
it was a big deal, and maybe
it
more
was.
important than a kiss.
Yeah. This has really been a great discussion about films. I didn't know we were going to go down that road, but I love good films. So, and if I love something, I'll see it multiple times. I mean, if I really like a film, I'll see it many times. We're at the end of our time, though. Can you show your book cover one more time?
Absolutely.
Mia Mess, she's a professor at Vassar, and she has a book called Black Rodeo, A History of the African American Western. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And I really loved the conversation. And I learned a few things. And I think the audience loved it too because they've been very engaged.
That's wonderful, Gwen. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, have a great night.
You too. Have a good night. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
bye bye. Okay, well, as for you all who may just be tuning in, we have two more guests, and then we'll be announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards in 15 categories. So we'll be doing that at 8:30, 9:30 if you're on the East Coast. So our next guest is a journalist and an author, and then she has her book cover on the screen for you to see, Loving Your Black Neighbor as Yourself. And this is a new book, and her name is Chante Griffin. And we welcome Chante to the show. And Chante is joining us from, where are you joining us from, Chante?
Los Angeles, California.
Oh, okay. Although your information said New York, but are you? Oh,
Maybe
you
it's
know what?
prophetic. I'll receive it.
Well, maybe it's your publisher who put the New York.
My publisher is in New York and Colorado Springs, so who knows?
Okay, all right. Well, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And do you have a copy of your book with you? We saw it on the screen. But great.
I'm ready. Black woman ready. Black author ready.
Okay. Loving your Black neighbor as yourself. So that's, of course, has a biblical tie-in as far as loving your neighbor as yourself. But you take it in another direction, or you make it more personal by saying loving your Black neighbor as yourself. So, first of all, what made you focus in on that? Was it some sort of seminal moment, or what made you decide to write from that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gwen. It actually started when I was visiting the motherland, and I was in Kumasi, Ghana, there working, serving, and literally heard a voice to tell me to write this book. And I started looking around like, who's talking to me? And then once again, the following week, one of my friends said, you should write a book about race and Christianity and love. And I was like, all right. And so that was the impetus. That was 17 years ago. That was a long time ago. And so I wrote for a little while, put the book down for about a decade, lived my life. And then the Black Lives Matter movement emerged. And I looked around and prayed and sensed, okay, now is the time to put this book out. Now is the time to call people to love sacrificially, and to love holistically.
Oh, okay. So the book came out. When did it come out exactly?
June 2024. So just last year.
Okay. So it hasn't been quite a year yet. Because it came to our attention. We get so many alerts about books, and so I don't remember every situation where every specific book came across our radar. But your book did. And was it nominated for an NAACP Image Award?
Yes, it was
Okay.
nominated for a 2025 NAACP Image Award, and the category was Outstanding Literary Work Instructional, because it is meant to instruct people. So yeah.
Okay, well, great. Now, did you win in your category?
I didn't. I had a feeling the person who won, it was for I don't remember the exact name. I think it's Wash Day, about Black hair. And when I saw
yes. Okay, I saw that among the winners.
I had a feeling, because it's about us. I think that book is written for us and about us. And I think my book is written primarily to other people about us.
Oh, okay. Now that's something I thought it was more for us, about us. Your book.
It's both, but I'd say it's primarily for non-Black people. This is how you love the way that you should be loving yourself, right? But for us, there's some gold nuggets in there in terms of how can we love each other better. And I think particularly if we look at this current administration and how they're purposefully not loving us, this book shows us strategically, how do we love each other more deeply? How do we continue in the footsteps of our ancestors that were really good at loving on us, right? We've always been good at uplifting each other and supporting each other despite how other people treated us. So it is for us, but a lot of it is for everybody else. Okay.
Other people. Okay. Now people who watch the show know I was nominated twice. I'm an author too. So I was nominated in instructional. One year. Well, and it's my most successful book, and I do a revision every year. It's about going to college debt free, so with scholarships. So the first edition of my book was I was nominated in 2015 for that book, and then 2016. But both of my books are self-published. 2016 was a different book that I wrote with my daughter, and that was in the teen category. But both times I got nominated, I knew who was going to win in the category I was in. I said, okay, I know, I can't remember who won. Oh, yes, I do. I think the year of the instructional one, the lady who does the green smoothie cleanse, I think she won. Okay. Yeah. And then for the teen category, we were up against a book about Malcolm X, written by Malcolm X's granddaughter. So I knew we weren't gonna we weren't gonna win that. But the nomination itself is something that stays on your resume forever, and it's very exciting. The events changed since I was nominated, from what I hear from people.
Well, yeah,
in terms of the literary part, because we actually were there. Like they had a Thursday, Friday. It was Thursday and Friday, and the literary stuff was on Thursday for us. And now it's like on a Tuesday or something.
It varies.
Did you go? Did you go?
I did not go to the main award show, but they had a reception for us that I went to, and I think. And I knew that I had lost by the time I got to the reception. But what was so beautiful was to be around so many talented Black creatives, directors and writers and actors and singers. And I think to be acknowledged by the country's oldest and most revered civil rights organization is always an honor. So I agree with you, and I'm excited to be here today with you.
Yeah, it was exciting. And the literary part of the Image Awards is a much hasn't been around as long as the other film part, because I blogged about it after I went. I said, I wonder how long it's been available, and it's like it was 30 years in that they started the literary part. So that's a great honor. Now, when you wrote this book and you decided to loving your Black neighbor as yourself, what was the response that you expected, or did you anticipate a response of any kind? How did you think it would be received by others? Since you wrote it, the audience you wrote it for is not necessarily us. So how was it received by the audience that you wrote it for?
It's interesting. I think it's definitely, as a newer book, still being received, but I think it was, how do I say this? I felt like when I spoke to, or yeah, spoke to a lot of, let's say, Black organizations about, speaking about the book, some of the pushback might be like, oh, we love this, but it's faith-based, so we don't know if we're able to do that as an organization. And then when I talk to some Christian, podcasts or different folks, they might say, oh, actually, it's race. We don't talk about that. So it was really interesting, some of the perception of my book as it's entered the marketplace that I did not anticipate. I think from Christians, I should have anticipated it, but my circle is very multicultural, right? And very affirming of multicultural issues. People outside of my circle, maybe not as much. But I think from those who have really embraced the book's message, I got a message on Instagram the other day from a white woman. And she's like, this is the book I've been praying for. I was asking God to show me how to love. And she said, I've read pretty much all the race books that have come out over the last 5 years, Chante. And your book is the only one that didn't just open up my head, it actually opened up my heart. So that has actually been the primary response I've gotten from folks who've read the book, is that they were shocked at how gentle I was. They were able to open up to God and to their neighbor in a new way. It didn't feel condemning, but it also didn't feel like I sugarcoated anything either. So that's been exactly what I wanted it to be, the response from folks who've read it. But I think I wish that the predominantly white Christian community would embrace the book more. But a lot of them are afraid of race. And I think what they've heard about race, what they've heard about being woke, it's very tainted and not at all accurate.
So what is the central theme, like in your book, the thread that runs through your book?
Yeah.
In terms of enlightening people, what's the common thread?
That's great. It really gives a fresh perspective on the Good Samaritan story. So I think most of us are familiar with that story. I'll just recap. There's a man on the side of the road. He's actually traveling, right? And he's beaten, he's robbed, he's beaten almost to the point of death and abandoned on a road. And then you have religious leaders who walk by the man, Jewish religious leaders, and they don't come close and they keep walking. And then you have a Samaritan, someone who's been hated. Yeah, you could say hated by a lot of Jews in that time, right? Hated in Jewish culture. A Samaritan who was looked down upon in Jewish culture actually is the one who loves the man sacrificially. And so I look at how the Good Samaritan loves this man on the side of the road. And then I take those ways that he loves and I say, this is how you can love your Black neighbor sacrificially. So I talk about the fact that he came close to the man. Like he didn't say, oh, that's not my problem, that's not my business, or I'm busy, or I don't want to get involved in somebody else's drama, I'm going to mind my own business. He actually comes close. He experiences intimacy with the man. And so I talk about in the Black community, that's what we do, right? When someone's suffering, someone needs support, we get close to them. We don't run away. Like, how can I help you? How can I be a part of you? So that's the first thing the book talks about. We also talk about how he literally nursed the man's wounds. That's something he did. He gave money. He put the man up at a hotel, right? He put him on his camel, and then he left. And then he told the innkeeper, I'll be back in a couple of days, but here's some money to take care of this man. So I talk about how do you use your resources to love your Black neighbor, right? I have 2 whole chapters on how do we use money. And then I use the Black community as an example. We are the most giving group in the United States of America. And I talk about that fact in my book. And then I talk about really the prayers, how the Good Samaritan loved the man with God's spirit, and how we can actually pray for our Black neighbors and pray for the Black community. So it really is a looking at this picture of the Good Samaritan and saying practically, how can we follow that example? Because that story's told a lot, but I think it kind of like people are, oh yeah, the Good Samaritan, but they don't really, really look at what he did and actually try to do the same thing in their own lives.
Okay, now the fact that you gave it a Christian spin, so to speak, is that because do you have ministry work that you do, or
Mhm.
what is your like day job, so to speak?
Yes, that is it. I used to be a university chaplain back in the day. But
Okay.
I think of all of life as ministry, and all ministry is love. I feel like ministry is just choosing to love people. And so that's what my whole life is dedicated to. My work, I get paid to write. And so, but I felt like there was no better way to teach people how to love Black people than to point them to God. Because I feel like God is love, right? And God shows us how to love people sacrificially. Jesus being on the cross is all about sacrifice. And so, I've read a lot of the books that are out there on race, and some of them have been super, super helpful. But some of them have left me feeling angered and enraged, and they haven't left me feeling like, oh, my heart is now more open and love. And I feel like, given all that's happening in our country and our world, we really need love. And I don't say that like, oh, we just need to kumbaya, hold hands and, love each other. But love is sacrificial, right? Love is me slipping $1,000 into your account when you don't have it. Love is saying, come live with me rent free because I know you're struggling right now, right? Like love has feet. And so I really talk about how we can put feet to the love that we're supposed to have for our Black neighbors. And I do it from a Christian point of view because I'm a Christian.
Okay, so you said you had some challenges trying to present this to Christian audiences. On the one hand, white Christian audiences didn't really receive it like you had hoped. And Black Christian audiences, give me let us know how that dynamic is. That's it's
Yeah.
like two sides of the same coin, or um, but it's opposite in many ways. Just
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
The
That's
way
a
we worship is different. It's very different.
so many things. I think there are different groups. There are Black Christians who have wholeheartedly embraced this book and feel like it speaks to them. There's all the non-Black, non-white, right? So the other BIPOC Christians who have embraced this book because they know what it means to be abandoned and left on the side of the road. And I think it's Black folks who aren't religious that have been like, ooh, how do I interact with this book, right? Because of how Christianity in the United States has been weaponized against Black people in a lot of ways. And so I think for me, everything comes down to our personal and communal interactions with God's spirit, right? It's not about this person or this organization, but it's about us being vulnerable and open to God and to one another. And so that's what I hope happens with the book. I hope that, white Christians in particular open up. I think, like humility is a sign of love. Humility is a part of love. If you can be humble enough to say, maybe I don't know everything I think I know about race. Maybe my Black neighbors have something to teach me. So this book really is me teaching folks, readers, how to love in ways that they probably don't already know. And I think it takes a humble person to come to the table and say, oh, maybe I don't know how to love the way that I think that I do. And I think there's a way that Black folks in this country, Black Christians in particular, because of what we've experienced racially in terms of injustice, in terms of racism, and the ways that we have to continuously forgive. There's a humility that comes when you have to continuously forgive people for racism over and over and over. And the way white people have been positioned in our culture, and white Christians even, they haven't had to embrace the same level of humility. And so my book is asking them to do just that. And I think that as folks are picking it up and reading it, they're like, oh, it actually feels good to be humble. It feels good to learn. It feels good to admit I don't know everything that I want to think that I know. Does that answer your question?
It does. I, the world we live in now, it seems like we have more access to more different people, but we are less open than we were when we didn't have the access to more different people. It's kind of like we've gotten in our corners and we don't even really listen to anyone who's different than we are. And hopefully your book can help with that. in terms of just being able to relate, being able to empathize with someone else as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's now how is your book broken down? Like what are your points of emphasis in the book?
Yes. So I'll open it up. So
Okay.
the first part really is just all about love. What is love? And I really go through the story of the Good Samaritan and I ask the reader to put themselves in, the Samaritan sandals or to put themselves in the robbed man's sandals. So I say that the robbed man, the man on the side of the road, he's the robbed man and he represents Black people, right? And the Good Samaritan represents God and our neighbors. And so that's the first part, talking about love. And the second part is just about loving your Black neighbor. So I'm sure you're probably familiar with the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. These are the ways that people give and receive love. And so I was like, well, how do cultural groups, view love? And so I created cultural love lenses. And this is how different cultures see love. And I'm like, how do Black Americans see and give love? And so I have a couple ways. The first way that I talked about is the Black love lens of intimacy. And I talk about intimacy with our neighbors in our neighborhoods and in our churches, because as we know, Sunday morning is one of the most segregated times in America. And then I talk about the Black love lens of honor and how just critical honor is in Black communities, right? In Africa and even here in America, honor and respect are just pillars in our community. I talk about how to show honor to your Black neighbors. And then I talk about the importance of standing up, right? Black folks, if we're not going to do nothing else, we're going to stand up for righteousness. We're going to stand up for the truth. We're going to stand up for justice. And so I give the reader opportunities and ideas for how to stand up for their neighbors. And then I talk about God's gifts. So this is another way of saying, like, how does God choose to bless us? It's so interesting. In my book, you mentioned college loans. I tell the story of how I prayed that God would have someone pay off my college loans after I graduated. And then somebody came and paid off my college loans after I graduated without me asking. Literally, I prayed and then somebody came and gave me money. And so that's an example of God's gifts, the way that God just gifts us with things, especially as Black people, right? My parents, I was the first person to go to college in my family. They didn't even know, they didn't have a college savings for me. They didn't have all these things. And so I took on debt, right? And God came and alleviated that debt. So I talk about what does it mean to let God's gifts, his resources flow through you to your Black neighbors. And then finally, I talk about the Black love lens of the Spirit of God, because I feel like God's Spirit, that voice that's telling us, give that person that voice that's saying, hug that person, that voice that's saying, extend your hand in friendship. That's God's Spirit. And once people interact with love, right, with the spirit of love, they're forever changed. So that's the loving your Black neighbor part. And then finally, I end with go and do likewise. And so the whole Good Samaritan story happens when a man comes to Jesus and he's like, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Like, and Jesus is like, be like the Good Samaritan. If you go and do likewise, right, you will be with me in eternity. And so I talk about what does it mean to, in our lives, go and do everything that the Good Samaritan did, right? How do we put those feet to our love? And so that's the book in 3 parts. And it is excellent. I'm not shy to say it. It is an excellent book. And not just because it was nominated, but I think, like the reader said, it doesn't just open up your head or your mind, it opens up your heart. Mm-hmm. And to your point, we need to be open to one another right now.
Mm-hmm, we do. So we have some comments, questions. Someone commented, how does this work for those of us Black people who struggle with the role of God in our lives?
So the question is, kind of people with savior complexes?
No, I think he's saying, well, and I don't want to misinterpret, but what I get from it is not everyone has the same a close relationship with God.
Okay.
In terms of, some people are, I won't say agnostic, but they they're not, involved in traditional religion, or they may not even feel like they have a close relationship with God, or they may just be confused, or just haven't settled on the approach. Or some people are, people say they were church hurt, they were hurt by church, and they've just given up on it. And so, what do you say to those people?
Just in general, or in regards to the book? Sorry, I'm trying to understand.
Well, both. I would say in relation to your book.
I think generally speaking, I would say that love just wants to love, right? So everything I say is going to come from scripture because that's my point of view, right? But
right.
I've experienced God's love in so many ways in my life. I've also experienced, leaders in the church not teaching me the truth or not loving me well, but I'm able to separate love from people. And so I think if I don't know a better life than one that interacts with the spirit of love. I don't know a better way. And so I'd say if you're open to love, I would say ask if you're open to even the idea of God, to say, okay, God, if you're real, God, if you're loving, God, if you're just, would you reveal yourself to me? Would you show me how much you love me? And then wait every day to see how God wants to love you. So that's just generally speaking. I think there have been atheists that have picked up my book, or people who are like, I don't believe. And they're like, oh, I still got something out of it. Right. Okay. I still can look at how can I use my resources to love my Black neighbor? How can I stand up for my Black neighbors when I witness injustice at work, or when they're trying to ban books at my children's school? How can I stand up for my neighbors in that way? Or how can I experience intimacy with my Black neighbors in my neighborhood, or in my church, or in my social group, right? So, or social club. So there are very practical things to do, even if you aren't a believer.
Okay. And we only have a couple minutes left. What do you say to the person who, a non-Black person who says that, why should there be a litmus test for them in terms of proving a negative? In that some people will say, why do I have to prove I'm not racist? And so I've heard that from white people. So how does your book address something like that, or an attitude like that?
Yeah, I never in my book say that someone is racist. I never say that. All I do is say, have you opened yourself up to the spirit of love? And have you asked questions? Have you said, Spirit, reveal to me the ways I may not see my Black neighbor through the lens of love? And have you been open to what you hear and what you see? Right? Because everything comes down to being open. When people are closed, you can't say anything to them. But if they approach the spirit of love with openness, they will hear things. They will hear things and they will see things. I'm not saying anyone is racist. That's not for me to say. I don't know people. I know the country we've grown up in. I know the air that we've breathed. I know the systems and structures that are in place. I don't know individuals, but the Holy Spirit knows you, and the Holy Spirit can show you when you're messing up. So I don't need to say that. And you wouldn't even listen to me if I said it. So I just say, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, do you want to love people? Do you want to love people more? Right? Do you feel like you're already loving people at maximum capacity? You're there with everybody. You're there with your Black neighbor. I'm not even there. So, right. And so if you're not there, then there's room for growth. Okay, cool. Then grow. But then also the other part of the book, loving your Black neighbor as yourself. I think we sometimes think that there's like a love is limited. Like there's a finite amount of love. And once I give away this love, there's no more. But actually, once you give away love, it actually grows. It actually compounds. And when you choose to be in a loving relationship with your neighbor, a lot of times they love you back, which means you receive love back. So there's more love as a result of you having chosen to love than there was before. So you're actually benefiting from the love you're dishing out, right? And then the book also says you can only give out what you already have. So I never even ask the reader to really love. I say, go to the source of love, and then with that love, give it out. right? Don't just give me money for my college scholarships because you feel sorry for me. I don't want your pity. But if you're praying and you hear God say, give Chante $20,000, then you go ahead and do that because I prayed for $20,000. Does that make sense? So it's really, we're just conduits of love. And anyone who says they don't want to be a conduit of love, then I don't want to be in a relationship with them and they can just go on about their lives.
Well, Chante, you've given us a lot of food for thought, and congratulations on the success of your book. And you've shown your cover already, but show it one last time.
Here we go.
Loving your Black neighbor as yourself. And thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for having me.
Okay, have a great night.
You too.
Okay, for those who are joining us late in the show, we have one more guest. Actually, this is a double guest. It's two people. And then at the end of the show, we will announce the finalists for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And we have a little special thing that we're doing for the announcements, that something that we've never done before. So we thought we would do something different. And you all will see it when it happens. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. But we actually have bookstore owners, and these, well, an owner and a manager of a bookstore in California, and they're in Elk Grove, California. And this is actually, they came across our radar, so to speak, because they were hosting an event called Black Girl Glow. Is a day of healing and self-love and restoration. We were just talking about love with the previous guests. So I don't know which one is Emily and which one is Shea. Is that how it's pronounced?
It is. I'm Shea, and this is
okay.
Emily.
All right. Okay. So they have a bookstore called A Seat at the Table Books, and they hosted this event for Black women. And so I said, let's have them on the show to hear about their bookstore and some of their initiatives and their mission and what they focus on with their constituents there in California. And what are you in Northern or Southern California?
We're just south of Sacramento in Elk Grove, which is one of the most diverse cities in the country. It's also home to the largest school district in Northern California. So there are a lot of needs to meet here as the only bookstore. And I'm really excited to be here focusing on the work that we have in common.
Okay. Now, how long have you had your bookstore?
We opened the physical store in late 2021. I opened a pop-up version of the store in January of 2020, which was quite a time to be entering the world with something new, but we figured it out. And the physical store has then been open for almost 3.5 years now.
Yes.
Okay. And this is what we have bookstore owners on the show periodically. So I asked them all the question of how did they come up with their name? And also, we used to own a brick and mortar store, my husband and I, so for 10 years. So, then a name is important because normally there's some kind, it's not done lightly. It's normally when you name a bookstore, it's a lot of thought that goes into it. So yours is called A Seat at the Table. And so what made you come up with that name?
I got the idea for the store basically kind of a lightning strike feeling, where a friend of mine mentioned that she wished she could open a bookstore. And I realized that we needed one here. And wouldn't it be cool if somebody opened a bookstore with a cafe and a quiet room and space for everyone to feel safe and comfortable? It'd be really great if somebody did that. And over a few weeks, I kept thinking about this, particularly when I was driving my minivan from one kid drop off to another, just thinking about the vision of having a bookstore that would really make people feel included. And I grew up conservative religious at an almost all-white Christian school. So I had grown up in not an inclusive environment, and books were a huge part of what helped me open my mind up to the lived experiences of people who had journeys that were different from mine and identities that were different from mine. So that was really the heart of what books meant to me, was this expanding of who we are and how safe we feel in the world and how much we make other people feel safe. So one day when I was driving, I had the idea of calling it A Seat at the Table. And that's actually when I realized I had to be the one to open it, because that was the heart. That's the heart of the store, is that everyone deserves a seat at the table. And books and community space are really essential to making that happen.
Okay. And then, Shea, how did you get involved?
Yeah, so I am actually a local author. And so I had pitched to Emily to have my book on her shelves. And then we basically created a friendship from there. I really enjoy making social media posts that get to hype up the bookstores that I'm in, that alongside the book, and how they're aligned. And I had a lot of fun with that, and was seeing the community response there. And then just really luckily, a position opened up, and Emily said, yes, please, you have to come work for me. And I said, okay, I would love to be there. I mean, there isn't really a better job than being surrounded by books. And as an author, getting to support other local authors on our shelves and really making sure that we're elevating those voices, whether they're historically silenced or actively being silenced today, and making sure that platform still exists. I get asked all the time, where's your banned book section? And I say, it's the store, because everyone deserves to see themselves in books and have access to their stories being told.
So what kind of books do you write?
So my first one was a YA. I started writing it in high school, so I was really telling my story. And I was an avid reader, and so I brought in a lot of books that I had been reading and really should have been classics that I was reading in school, like Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison and a lot of the greats. And then the one I'm working on now is a adult speculative fiction, or a zombie end of the world story. 2020 radicalized many of us. And so I was really trying to grapple with what we were witnessing, both the virus and how we weren't seeing a community response here in the States to protect each other, and then also the police brutality we were seeing. And so I thought, what if we had a virus that turned us into zombies? And if we got to have a reset, would just power systems be possible? And who would be in charge if that were the case? And so that's the story I'm working on now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you're right. If you're a reader, and I'm a reader and a writer, so then a bookstore is a great place to be. And a book can be your best friend, and you can never have too many books.
Agreed. Yes. Absolutely. There is not a good reason not to buy the book. Always buy it.
I keep my to be read shelves continue to have things added, but I keep buying books. One, I want to support the authors, and the show introduces me and our audience to so many authors. We've had over 700 guests in the. We'll celebrate our 5th anniversary in July for the show. We started during COVID, July of 2020.
That 5-year milestone is so essential.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Yeah,
and one of the authors you've had on is one of our local authors too, Brian Copeland.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's going to be on. He has a new book coming out.
Yes, he does. And he's launching
in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, he'll be in store to talk about it and do a writing workshop for the community too.
Okay, I read that book, by the way. He was on the show with that book. And then his I think the next book is a sequel.
Yes.
I think it's a part 2. So now tell us about the local author who hosted the Black Girl Glow, and how you all got involved with that event.
Yeah, so Regina Lawless was one of the hosts of Black Girl Glow. And I met her because she reached out. Well, actually, she's part of a group called Bay Area Book Babes out of the Bay Area. And so we have many of those local authors on our shelves, but that's how I first got introduced to her. And she's hosted a couple different events. She's hosted open mics with us, and her book is amazing. We want to get it into as many hands as possible. And she is just such a bright light in the community and in my life, and I'm glad to know her. And she's the founder of her own organization called Bossy and Blissful, which is a restorative community for Black women leaders. And we knew that if we were going to be able to host this event successfully, it had to be anchored by Black women in community. So Regina Lawless was one of the anchors. And then the president of our nonprofit board is another Black woman. And so it was our nonprofit with Regina Lawless hosting this event. And me behind the scenes just really amplifying and giving energy and supporting it on the ground.
Oh, okay. So how did your event go? When was it exactly? Because that was how I learned about your store, because of the publicity for the Black Girl Glow.
Yeah, I'm so glad
about events, and then I said, "Oh, well, we need to find out more about the store and get them on." And then, and I'll just share this with the audience. When I emailed you, you said, "Well, thank you for contacting me. I'm not Black, but is it still okay for me to be on?" And we have non-Black guests from time to time, different if it's a relevant topic, if it's related. We've had several that have written some amazing historical books about Black people or an era of history. And so, sure, we do that. So, but how did that all come about? How did you end up just making your store a place to go to for these kinds of events?
Yeah, I mean, as Emily said at the beginning, we're trying to be a seat at the table for our whole community. And I think the Black community is still an area that we're really wanting to make sure you and they know that you have a safe space with us. And the way to do that is to host events that they know that they can attend and feel welcome and want to have joy and have inclusion and, again, be introduced to the books that we have. Like you said, the publicity of the event is how it reached you. And that's exactly it, is we want to make sure that we're using the channels available to us and having the people who are amplifying it be the right voices. And Regina and Jasmine's voices absolutely were the ones to be uplifting that. So that was the idea behind the event. And then the idea to call it Black Girl Glow, a day of self-love, restoration, and healing, that came from Regina, because she said, what I'm talking about in my circles with my women is that we need rest. Like, we have been running for a long time, and how do we get that recharge, and how do we have even the space to have that self-love? And so we need an event like this. And so we built an entire day of events catering to self-love, restoration, and rest. So we had yoga or soulful stretch with a local leader, and we had a local book talk, and we had, guided writing exercises, and we had an opening ceremony with a local poet. And we really just were trying to reach holistically all those senses of wellness and what this community might need. And I say most of the people we brought through the door also hadn't ever heard of us. So we were successful there. And then when we surveyed later and said, well, were we successful? Did we create joy? Did we create inclusion and a space of safety? We heard overwhelmingly yes. So hopefully the first of many, maybe an annual event. And we're always looking at ways to bring in Regina again, because she's just amazing.
So how many people attended the Black Girl Glow?
Yeah, so over the course of the day, it turned out to be a more intimate event than we were thinking, given all of the different hosts that we had of the day. But I would say, over the course, maybe 40.
Okay, that's a good solid number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think importantly, there were no ticket proceeds going to the store. There was nothing that was sales driven, because this was not about driving business. This was about walking the walk of serving our whole community, and also being a kind of a pass-through space where people could come and support each other, but it was not driven by serving the bookstore's needs. It was our nonprofit president, Jasmine Newt, along with Regina, being able to run programming and not have to worry about the cost of space or coordinating with a venue or having that full day of availability from a venue. So I think it was very successful in that way as well, even though it was a smaller turnout, being able to focus on serving needs.
Okay, now Elk Grove, how big is Elk Grove?
Almost 200,000 people. It's growing very fast.
Bigger. Okay, it's bigger than one would think.
Yeah.
It's not a number that I had in my mind. Even anything close, anything over 100,000, I was thinking it was going to be, more like 40,000 or a small community.
And that's what it feels like, honestly. You don't go into the city center and think, oh my gosh, this is a huge city.
So what is your Black population there in the area? In terms of
Elk Grove is one of the most diverse cities in the country, and that includes representation from different groups. I know more that the school district is close to a quarter Black, a quarter white, quarter Asian, and then the other groups broken down as well. But I'm not sure about the city itself. I know the city itself is about 50% white and 50% non-white.
Okay. All right. Well, now, are you all close to the water, the mountains, or I've been to California and I've kind of been all over it. It's a beautiful state.
Thank you. Yeah. Kind of all of it. That's the cool thing about Sacramento County proper is that we're within a half an hour to an hour of all of those things. I'd say Elk Grove is more rural, like farmland. But the river is just, a couple miles this way, and you can see the mountains and get away. Tahoe is mostly what people think of, as well as the bigger cities, right? Like getting into San Francisco or the Bay Area is just an hour and a half west.
Okay, yeah. When I think of Joe, but I'm thinking of Fresno. Fresno was very green. That's what I remember about it. It was extremely green.
It was green. You must have come on the day we got precipitation.
It was just green everywhere. That's what I remember. Fields of green. But I drove Pacific Coast 1 years ago from LA to San Francisco.
Then you wouldn't hit us at all. We're too inland.
Okay. Yeah. But it was a very beautiful drive. Kind of scary when you're driving up against the ocean and those narrow roads. It's kind of scary. I wasn't driving, thankfully, but it was still scary. But now, how do you open up your space? Do you have community events? Are you trying to focus on building local authors? What are some of your missions for your bookstore?
I mean, honestly, we're trying to do it all. We have an event almost every day to try to give, people might be looking at one event, like maybe the Black Girl Glow event, and they might go, oh, that sounds like a lot. I can't be there at 9 a.m. I'm not even awake then. Or, maybe too many people, or yoga is not my thing, but maybe they're interested in a book club, or maybe they're interested in an open mic night, or maybe they're interested in, what's another event that we have? We have Crafternoon right now, which is just a bunch of people doing whatever craft they love. So it's crocheting, or it's drawing, or it's writing, but just giving as many avenues for people to build community as possible, and in many different facets. As an author, since I've sort of sat on both sides now, I have put a ton of energy into lifting up the local authors and really making that shelf shine. And like I said, making sure it's as diverse a shelf as any of the rest of our genres. I know being an author, being in other bookstores, it's usually a lot of nonfiction and a lot of like older white people. So I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case, because there's so many good stories being written right now. And it's the gatekeepers of publishing are still very older white men. And so if I can have any say in what stories get told and amplified, then that feels really important to me. But yeah, we're trying to create as many access points as possible. If you want to speak more to the mission.
Well, just to kind of jump off what you're saying too, that is why we work with more local authors than almost any other bookstore I know. And that comes from Shea's expertise that she shared very early on at one of our local author fairs, where any local author could have a table and sell their books directly. And she was sharing about the barriers in publishing that lead to more of our marginalized population being self-published instead of traditionally published. So we've really put a lot of work into a robust local author program that gives more access to our audience, to the authors in our community, which I think is really important. We also have a quiet room, and that is inspired by the neurodivergent members of my family who have needed space where they can just turn the sensory input down. And that is often something you have to say that you have a diagnosis in order to access, or that you have to create for yourself because a space is not built for you. So we have done as much as we can to build our space in a way that creates that safety for everybody in our community across all of the spectrum of identities that have been marginalized. And I am really proud of the open mics because we get a lot of people who it's their first time performing, and it's a diverse group of performers and speakers who are sharing work that maybe they wouldn't have felt safe sharing at a different open mic. So every single event that we do is really curated to be very intentionally welcoming and very intentionally celebrating of everyone who might attend.
Okay. Now, do you all, when you all curate your books, when you decide which books you're going to bring in, what goes into, I know you have, as a former bookstore, I know you have to carry what's popular or what's in demand, but how do you decide what to add to that? Because when you have a bookstore, generally you need to expand beyond just that core group of books that people can get everywhere.
There's kind of multiple factors to that. One of them is we don't have every author you can get everywhere, quite on purpose. We do not actually have Dr. Seuss books regularly shelved because he was also known for racist cartoons in the newspapers. We can order things in that are not on our shelves, but we're not going to give designated space to those authors. We're not going to carry J.K. Rowling because of how she erases trans and now asexual identities. So there's the who we will not carry and the more stringent kind of expectations for some of these mainstream authors. But there's also who we will carry. So I actually was at a conference in February where I got to have dinner with an author. I have a printout here because the book is not out yet. This book comes out next week. It's called All the Noise at Once by Deandra Davis. I got to have a dinner with her courtesy of Simon & Schuster. And she told us all about this book. And then I got to sit with her at an author signing after that. And she personally customized her signature to my daughter, who reads all of our middle grade books for us. And my daughter's also writing. So Deandra wrote to keep writing because people want to hear my daughter's story. But this is about an autistic Black teenager whose brother is wrongfully accused by something of a white cop, whose family member is part of freeing that kid from suspicion. So it is dealing with a lot of different layers and things that we're really passionate about. And I just love how this cover kind of shows the story for you. So I printed it out and taped it to another book because this does
okay.
She's also a professor and a mom of 5. Like, this person is absolutely Deandra Davis. I would recommend connecting with her sometime. I can connect you. Okay. But we're looking for stories we're really pumped about, we're really enthusiastic about. And a lot of that is because it's opening up the world to more readers and opening up people's lives in ways that have not always been told as much. And that's just more inspiring. We get people coming in and crying once a week because they've never seen themselves on the shelves the way that they do here. So there's, yes, definitely some of the bestsellers that are making it. But there's also a lot of stories that it takes a bookseller to sell because mainstream authors, they will sell anyway. They don't need our help as much. But Deandra Davis is new to the scene and her story needs to be told to as many people as possible. So we get to have that like excitement and that what we call hand selling, as I'm sure you know in the industry, where we're getting to actually have conversations with people and say, this book is so good, but you won't necessarily hear about it the same way that you're going to hear about a major author.
Right.
You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, the other author we love and are working so hard to bring out from the East Coast is Tony Keith Jr. His book is called How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, and he has just won like every single award and has just been nominated and is being recognized all over the place. And his bio is that he's an award-winning Black U.S. American gay poet, spoken word artist, and hip hop educational leader. And I love being able to bring that to the shelves and be able to showcase hip hop in a different light, right? And being able to basically take it back to its roots, that it's all about radicalizing and educating and freeing. And so having this on the shelves and being able to hype this up and saying, please buy this, like your life will get changed. And then being able to bring him into the community and introduce him to our community. We're thinking of lots of different ways to be able to bring him out here. And he's incredible. There's a lot of authors that ask for honorariums, as is their due, for being so big. And he's like, if you can get me out there, I'll talk to y'all.
So if you know any Sacramento organizations or anyone's watching, I mean, as an author and bookseller, there's not a lot of money in book selling. Right. So we don't have a lot of excess that we can use to splurge on plane tickets. But boy, would our community love to meet Tony Keith. I talked to him at a conference and his energy was just, it stayed with me over a year later. I still remember what it felt like to meet him. So if we can get him out here by partnering with someone, that will be such a gift to our local community.
Okay. And finally, because we're at the end of our time, if someone was an author in your area or planning to visit your area and wanted to do a book event at your store, is that possible? And how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a whole authors page where you can get more info, and I'm the one who monitors our authors inbox. And we have a form that you fill out so I can get to know you a little bit better and who your intended audience is and what your book is about. And then we go from there. And yeah, one of the major events that we do are author events. We have a few that we host regularly and monthly, and otherwise we can build it around the author, whether it's a reading or a discussion. When Brian's book Outraged came out, we built a whole discussion with Tracy Stafford, another community local activist, and got to discuss and really dive into the topics that he's discussing in the book. And it was a packed house. I mean, these are dialogues that people are looking for and are looking to have safely, right? And so that's what they would do. They would go to our website, fill out the form, and then I would reach out to them.
Okay, so your website is
aseatatthetableBooks.org. Yeah, the whole title.
.org.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you can't get all the A's and T's in there, if you just search out Grove Bookstore, we're the only one. So then that'll pull us up in Google, and so you can find the form from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Emily and Shea, for being on Black Authors Matter TV and continue to your bookstore.
We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so this is the time that we're going to be announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And what we're doing different tonight, because Rhonda is on assignment, she wasn't able to come on the show tonight with the announcement of the finalists. We invited one of our regular viewers, and those of you who watch the show know this person's name. So she's going to assist me in terms of feedback when we announce the finalists, because Stephanie Burnham has watched this show almost every time we come on. She wins books most of the time, and we've never met at all. This is my first time seeing her face virtually, or like her, moving, in action. I've seen her still photo, but I've never seen her video or anything. So we are excited to have Stephanie Burnham joining us on the show for the announcement of the awards. And we have never done this before. So this is something we've never done in almost 5 years. We've had other people come on, but they're part of the team or the part of the festival, or they're people that never had a guest come on and to help. So Stephanie, welcome to the show. They're part of the team or and turn your device down. Now you should know that at watching the show. if you're trying to listen to with another device, you need to turn the sound down all the way down because there's a 5 or 6 second delay.
You would think I would know that by now.
When it's live, anything can happen. So that's what, a lot of people will ask us, well, not a lot. Some authors will ask us if we tape the show. They want to tape interview, and we never tape interviews. Everything's live. It's always been live, and it's always going to be live. How about that? So anyway, Stephanie, what do you think about these finalists, and did you get a chance to vote?
No, I did not get a chance to vote. And normally I do, and because I have favorites, and but I have not gotten a chance to vote yet.
Well, the voting ended, I think last Friday. So, and then we counted the votes over the weekend. And so, once we announced the finalists at the end of the show, we have a video of all the finalists that has been created. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be posting that on the Facebook page and Instagram page sometime this week. So then you'll be able to see all their pictures and everything. So without further ado, we're going to start with the first category, and it is biography memoir. And at the end of each one, we're going to pause a little bit to congratulate them. And then, Stephanie, you can give me some feedback and give the audience, let the audience know what you think about this group of finalists. There's some I will say there's some names that won't be a surprise, and there's some people who are not high profile names, but they work to get their supporters to vote, and that's what it's about, the vote.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so you can be, and sometimes you're a name that people know, but some other people just worked hard,
Exactly.
That happens with the winners too. Sometimes you expect it, sometimes it's somebody unexpected. So anyway, our first category is biography memoir.
Okay.
And the finalists are Marita Golden, Casey Grant, Star Rebel, Tanya Smith, or it might be pronounced Tanya. I think it's Tanya though. It's Tanya Smith, and Malika Williams.
Okay.
So congratulations to those finalists. And one of them, we have 3 publishing sort of partners, for lack of a better word, that work with us with their authors throughout the year. And they also normally, they're part of the book festival as well. So She Publishing is one of them, BK Royston Publishing and Black Odyssey Media. So Star Rebel is with She Publishing, one of the sponsors of and these 3 publishers are going to be their sponsors for the award show that we have. So the award show is May 13th. And, it's like if you've ever seen it, it's like the Grammys or the Academy Awards. We announce the finalists and have their pictures, and then we open an envelope and we announce the winners, and they actually get awards mailed to them after the fact. So do you remember any of those interviews, the biography memoirs?
Oh, definitely. Of course, the one that stands out for me is Marita Golden, because she's a favorite.
Yeah, she was recent too. So
exactly, yeah.
So yeah, she's been around for a long time in the publishing world.
I know, my goodness.
Yeah. Okay, so the congratulations, and those who are tuning in, if you're tuning in to wait to see if your name gets called, then we're just getting started. And we had the first category. So the second category is children's. So the finalists in the children's category, and we have 15 categories. So it's a lot of, it's 75 people altogether.
Okay.
15 times 5. So Erica Archer, Sharon Draper, Vonda Michaud Nelson, Carter Reed, and Arminette Reed, Jewel Parker Rhodes, and Kelly McWilliams. And the last two, it was two guests. So Carter Reed and Arminette Reed were together. And Carter Reed is I think like 10 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And he was on with his grandmother, I think it was his grandmother. So they were on the show together, but the book was his idea and his concept. So
yeah, I remember that show.
Yeah. He was very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And then Jewel Parker Rhodes and Kelly McWilliams, they're a mother and daughter. They're authors individually, but they wrote a children's book together.
Yeah.
So congratulations for the children's authors who were finalists. And we're going to move right along to Christian fiction / religious faith. So the categories tend to be the same every year, but sometimes we end up combining because we have to have 5 in each category. And if we don't have 5, then we combine it with something similar.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we have to have more than 5 to get 5 finalists.
So you're keeping it as close as you can to the Oscars, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we do. This is, because it's recognition for people.
Exactly.
So, okay, this category had a lot of names that people know, well-established authors. So, the finalists in the category: Sheila E. Bell, Linda Henderson, Rhonda McKnight, Pat Simmons, and Michelle Stimpson. So those are the finalists. And Linda Henderson is with B.K. Royston Publishing.
Okay.
So she was an author with that publisher. And so those are the finalists. And the other ones are all very well-established authors. Linda is she was a new author, so, but she worked, got her supporters to vote for her.
That's what you do. You campaign.
Yeah.
So and some of those people have reached out to me and said, hey, I need your vote, so I know how it's done.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It was on my news feed. Regularly. People were asking for votes, and that's simple. And we did a boosted ad asking people to participate who may not even watch the show. So we opened it up to the public, and we had more than 2,000 ballots cast.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, more than 2,000. There was a lot of voting. So, but we have this operation is a well-oiled machine.
Exactly.
So we're able to turn things around. So anyway, we're going to move to the next category, which is fantasy urban fiction. And the finalists in this category are Mark Beausejour, Roy Glenn, LaJill Hunt, Jaquel J., and Canyon Jerome. So in that category, 2 of them were with She Publishing. That's Mark Beausejour and Canyon Jerome are with She Publishing. Jaquel J. is with Black Odyssey Media. And the other 2, Roy Glenn and LaJill Hunt, they've been writing for a long, long time, both of them. And they were both on recently, Roy Glenn and LaJill.
Okay.
And I had no idea. Roy, you learn things about people when they come on the show. I had no idea Roy had written as many books as he had. And I didn't know that LaJill wrote for shows. So she wrote, it's a Cowboy Wilson. What is this show? Not Cowboy, it's somebody. She writes for a show that's online.
I'm surprised if you can remember, because you interview so many guests. How can you keep them all together?
Well,
I don't know how you do it.
I deal with the names multiple times, so that helps because I produce the show. I invite the guests.
Right.
So, or if they participate from a marketing standpoint, some people sign up to be a guest. So I'm dealing with each guest, just getting them prepared for the show, getting the information, creating the flyer, and then sending them the link to their YouTube interview afterward. So I'm communicating with them 4 or 5 times in the course of.
Okay. I just
That's
wanted
how.
to, how
So
does
that's how
she
I
do that?
remember.
My goodness.
Yeah, that's how. And you know, my memory is not as good as it used to be, but some things I remember. Some things just stick in my mind.
You know, I listened to you on the show and I said, how does she remember that Lou Rawls was on the Big Valley?
Because it was unusual.
Okay, I said I wouldn't. That happened back in the wasn't. Did you see the actual show? Wasn't it in the
Yeah, I
70s?
saw the actual show, but I saw it in the last 10 years. You
Oh,
know what
okay.
I saw a rerun of it.
Oh, okay.
But
I
no,
was I was like, who remembers that? Gosh, she's got an astounding memory. That's great though.
no, I saw it in the last 10 years. And
Okay.
actually, when I saw it, I said, wow, I had no idea Lou Rawls even did any acting. So
Hmm.
that's and he sang while he was on there. So then that
Uh-huh.
made it just stick in my mind.
I got you. Okay.
So anyway, next category is historical fiction. And the finalists for historical fiction are Piper Hughley, Angela Jackson Brown,
Hmm.
Earl Sewell,
Okay.
Trisha Thomas, and Tiffany Warren.
Okay.
So they're all established authors, and it's some good historical fiction work that's being put out.
I know.
It's been put out in the last 4 or 5 years. It's really been really almost like a golden age of historical fiction, Black historical fiction.
I have to admit that when you have the historical fiction authors on, I am so delighted. I just kind of lean into it because there's so much to learn when they're talking about what they have researched.
It's true, and they pick a particular subject and they just dive all in. They
And
go all in with the background and lineage, and they go and find old newspaper articles and
mhm,
they have to do a lot of research.
things that you
And
would never have known
right,
otherwise. Hmm.
right. And there are more coming. There are more books coming. So then that's exciting too. So that's the historical fiction. Next category is history. And in that category, we have Justine Hill Edwards, Chris Morehouse, Gerald Smith, Ron Tarver, and Dr. George Walters Slam.
What was that category again?
History.
Oh,
So
history. Oh,
this is history versus historical fiction. These people actually wrote history
right,
books, you know, but not historic. They didn't put a
right.
fictional spin on it. Just
Yeah. This is the true stuff. This
yeah,
is
this is the true
facts.
stuff of true
Yeah.
fact. So that's a solid group as well.
Hmm.
So next we have mainstream fiction, and the finalists in mainstream fiction are Avery Cunningham, Mary Monroe,
Hmm.
Leonard Pitts, Aretha Thomas, and Omar Tyree.
Hmm.
And so we have some well-established people in that category as well. So what do you think so far, Stephanie?
Well, I don't, I could make some predictions, but I don't want to because I could anger some people, but I know I have my favorites. I could, I could say that Omar Tyree is going to run with mainstream, yeah, but, uh, you know, um, there could be an upset.
And there often are upsets.
Yeah.
The people,
So
and
you
here's
never
something
know.
else that happens with the voting. When the voting happens, um, somebody will get a strong start,
Uh-huh.
and then they'll stop. I guess stop getting people to vote for them.
Oh,
And then somebody else will be like, "Oh, I forgot about it. Let me get started." And then
uh-huh.
their votes will start coming in, and they'll overtake the person who started off strong. So
Uh-huh.
you have the votes coming in the whole time.
Exactly. Okay. And I guess it all depends on who the strongest campaigner is.
Yeah, it's
And
yeah, you have to really, you
mhm,
know, tout yourself. You
exactly. You have
can't
to,
be shy, and
yeah.
people will vote for you if you ask. You know. So, all right, we're moving right along to motivational, inspirational. And in that category, we have Angela Anderson, Melanie Benita,
Mhm.
Erica Ford, Marvin O'Brien, and Deborah Owsley.
Now, can you have a person in more than one category?
No,
Oh, you can. Okay. I thought I heard a name
okay,
being
no,
considered.
no. The way we do it is the people who've been on the show. I think the first date was March 13th of last year to March 4th of this year. So
Mhm.
everybody who's been on the show gets
Uh-huh.
included,
Oh,
but
okay.
only once, even if they were on the show twice in the 12-month period, which
Uh-huh.
a couple of people were. We have
Right.
a rule: you can't be on the show 6 months with
Oh,
any 6-month period. You can't
okay.
be a repeat guest
Okay.
except after 6 months have passed.
Oh, okay.
So, and then we try to have variety because, we don't want to
Yeah,
have the same, we want to keep it interesting.
right.
So, but no, it's no two names in any category. Not,
Okay.
not for this.
I just wondered if someone could try to pull that off and say, well, I may not make it in the historical fiction, but maybe I can make it in the.
Well, they don't get to pick their category. We pick them based
Oh,
on them being a guest and what their book
oh,
was about when they came on the show.
I
Because
see.
some of the authors write in different genres. And
Exactly.
so they may have been nominated. They might have made the finalist list in a previous year in a
Uh,
totally different category,
okay.
depending on what their book was when they were on the show. So that's what it's
Okay.
based on.
Got you.
And it's a good question to ask because we never really get a chance to know what people want to know about
Hmm.
the process. And you're giving the viewers take on things. So,
Good.
or you get, and we're answering some questions from people. So we already have some people saying congratulations to people. Okay, so the next category is mystery, thriller, crime fiction. So we combine those three
Hmm.
for this one. And the finalists are Sharon C. Cooper, Brandon Massey, Wanda Morris,
Hmm.
Brian W. Smith, and Pamela Samuels Young and Dwayne Alexander Smith, because they appeared
Oh, oh,
together and
yes.
they wrote a book together. So um, they count as one. So though, and those are all well established
Yes,
authors.
indeed. Oh my goodness, that's a tough category there.
That is. That's
I,
going to be interesting to
I
see who wins.
Pamela Glasgow. No, let me stop.
But she's in California with you.
I know. Yeah.
They both are in California. And tonight the last two guests were in California.
Mhm.
The second guest, the third guest that was the bookstore, and then you're in California. That
Exactly.
that 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 never happens. But we have everybody from the West Coast.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often. Most of the time, people are on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, and then our time is based on Houston, where we're based, and so people who they don't look, they assume it's East Coast time. They assume it's Eastern time. Sometimes they
Hmm.
don't really look at it, even though when I email them, I put it in
Hmm.
red, I emphasize it, I put it in bold. Check your time zone. Some people still don't because when you're on the East Coast, it is true. I'm from the East Coast.
Hmm.
You just think the time that you're on there is the time.
I know.
You don't really think about.
You have so many times I have missed out because they did not put the time on there, and I assume right away it's my time. And it turns out it's Eastern time, and I said, "Oh well, I missed out that one."
Yeah, and TV does that.
Oh yeah?
TV, well, they put Eastern time on shows.
Yeah. So I
So,
think,
you know, that's but that's because the networks are in New York.
yeah,
Well, LA too, but New York mostly.
right. Yeah.
So okay, we're moving right along to nonfiction. And nonfiction, the finalists are Peggy Dixon, Dr. Cedric Howard,
Ooh.
Victor McLaughlin. Uh, and these doctors, the three doctors, they appeared together. They were three Black women doctors that appeared
Mhm.
together: Dr. Sylvia Moore, Angela Walker, and Diane Boykin. And then the final finalist is Dr. Sabrina Williams, who's a separate
Mhm.
guest. But those are the ones for nonfiction. And Peggy Dixon is with BK Royston, so that's from the sponsors. Um,
Mhm.
and I've met Marvin O'Brien, who was in Motivational. He's with She Publishing.
Okay.
So, good representation. Just overall, we have a good combination of well-established authors and people who are up and coming, getting their feet
Right.
wet, so to speak, getting traction. So next is romance, and the finalists are AC Arthur,
Okay.
Kimberly Brown,
Okay.
Sylvia Hubbard, Sierra London, and Jacqueline Thomas.
I'm sorry, who was the last one?
Jacqueline Thomas,
Oh, Jacqueline Thomas. Okay.
who just recently celebrated her 100th book.
Oh, okay.
She was
Wow.
on the show with
Yeah, all she does is write.
she,
I mean, I wonder
I,
how
I
do you
don't know
have
how
time
people
to
do
do
it.
anything else when you just how do they do that?
Well, she writes full time, I think. But
Yeah,
I
but
still don't know. I still don't know how you come up with so many different stories. My mind is not like that for
well, I can
fiction.
understand how you could, but she must have a template just in place, and and with the template in place, all she has to do is just get the words in and just zip it out.
Well, she
I would
she
just like,
writes romance, but she started writing some mysteries too. So
uh,
she's trying her hand in different kinds of writing. But that's a lot of books.
that is.
That's a lot of stories. So next we have women's fiction, and in that category is Phyllis Dixon, Suzette Harrison, and Suzette Riddick. They wrote some books together.
Uh-huh.
Casey Mills,
Uh-huh.
Susetta Perkins, and Jessica Tillis
Ooh,
in women's fiction.
okay.
And Kimberly Brown and Casey Mills are with Black Odyssey Media. So that's finalists. And then the last book category is young adult fiction / poetry.
Okay.
So the finalists in that category are Nikki Anthony, G. Douglas Davis IV,
Okay.
Kim Johnson, Mark Lacey, and Farrah Roshan.
Okay. All right.
So those are all the author categories. And then we have two other categories that we do. We do bookstores and we do book industry support. So the
You
bookstores,
you said
go
you
ahead.
do bookstores, and I the last part I didn't hear.
Book industry support. So
Oh, okay.
bookstores, that speaks for itself. So but book industry support,
Hmm.
they're not an author, they're not a bookstore. They do
Oh,
something else. They could be a book club facilitator. They could be a literary agent, a marketer, a
oh,
publisher. They're in some other capacity when they come on the show.
okay. Now that I
So
know
they
that,
could
I'm
be an
gonna.
author, but when they came on the show, they came
Uh,
on in the capacity
uh-huh.
of something else that's book industry related.
Okay.
So
I
now with the book,
I need to start running in some of these categories, just to see if I could, get campaign and get my name in the bright lights.
well, uh, getting started is the hardest part, but once you get started, then you started. So, when I wrote my first book, I really had never, I've been a writer my whole life in terms of just, always won writing contests in school, and that was my
Right.
strongest subject everywhere from one, because I didn't go to kindergarten, from grade 1 through college.
Mhm.
English was always my strongest, but I never really thought about writing books. I did a lot of op-ed writing, newspaper
Oh.
commentary writing. I did some
Oh.
newspaper freelancing.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I did that kind of writing, short pieces, but
Uh-huh.
I never really thought about writing books. And then a situation happened that, but I've been in business my whole adult life practically. So a situation happened, and I said, you know what? I need to write this book about this particular topic. So I sat down and I wrote my first book. It took me about 7 months.
What?
Yeah, it took me 7 months and it was done.
Ah.
And I was very excited about it. But when I wrote the book, I really didn't get a chance to promote it because my brother died like the
Oh.
day after the book came out, literally.
Yeah.
He died of cancer
Oh
the
my
day
goodness.
after my first book
That's so
came
hard.
out. And so I really just had no heart to
Yeah.
to promote it,
Understandable.
But it still sells. It came out in December of 2007. It still sells. It's a
Hmm.
topic that's relevant. It'll always be relevant.
Hmm.
It's about group economics as it relates to Black people.
Wow.
The history of the efforts, the reasons why it's needed, the reasons why some of the efforts didn't succeed, um, and solutions and a plan of action.
Wow.
I'm a solution oriented person,
It's
and the book
great.
still sells. And because it's everything in it is relevant. It's like uh, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I'm an author too, right?
what did you say?
When I hear about people that say it only took me 7 months, and it took me almost 10 years to finally write my book. So I wrote a mystery book.
Oh, okay. Well, the mystery I wrote, both of them took 5 years. So
Okay.
fiction takes me a long time to write.
Oh, okay.
Nonfiction, I
Yeah.
can do a book in 6 months. But
Okay.
fiction, it just you have to create a whole world. So we need to finish because we're almost at the end of
Oh
the
my goodness. Okay.
yeah.
Time
So for
flies.
the bookstores, we only had 5 bookstores. And so what we did was we just included all 5 in the list.
Okay.
And so they're all of them are finalists because we didn't want to put them with the book industry support. We wanted to keep the bookstores separate. So the bookstores are is Carla Agado with Sis Joy Christian
Hmm.
Bookstore, um, Aisha Brown with Protagonist Black Bookstore, Tammy Martin with KRC Bookstore, Jasmine Okafor and Keshe Elamine with A Small Place Bookshop, and Tamara Shiloh with Multicultural Bookstore. So those are the bookstores, and they were all finalists because we only had 5 and we just left them all.
Okay. Now,
So,
can they run again if they lose? Can they run next year?
well, see, they don't run. If they're on the show, they get
Uh-huh.
automatically included.
Oh, okay, great.
Nobody runs. Nobody runs.
Okay, that's right.
It's
That's right.
automatic inclusion
Auto,
if you're on the
okay,
show.
so if they come on the show, they're automatically in. Okay, I
Yeah,
like the way
yeah,
that's done.
yeah. And so the whole process is everybody who's been on the show for 12 months gets in the first round of voting. So
Oh, okay.
everybody gets a chance.
First
And
12
then
months. Okay.
after that is the finalists. So the final category is book industry support and is Shanitha Burton with She Publishing,
Hmm.
Jennifer Copeland, who came on as an avid reader,
Hmm.
Sharon Elliott, she's an author and literary agent, LaShira Lee is a literary agent, and Lisa Woodson is a literary agent. So the literary agents, they had their people voting.
Yes, indeed.
They got the word out,
Well,
and
they know how it's done. So,
yeah, they do.
yeah.
So that's our lineup of finalists. The voting for the winners begins April 15th. It lasts to the 29th.
Mhm.
And the award show where we'll announce the winners is May 13th. So just check the Facebook page. You'll get to see the video of the finalists. And when we open up the voting for the winners, so you can pick among the finalists, then we'll post that as well. So you've been
All
on the look out for
right.
that. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for helping out tonight with the awards. And
Certainly, my pleasure.
yeah, thank you also for being such an dedicated viewer for so long.
I love this show.
Okay, and for being a book winner, you win books all the time, so you probably have a couple of shelves on your book.
I don't have any book. I don't have any place to put books anymore. I said, I'm going to have to I'm glad Curtis came in and took over, because I said I've ran out of room for books.
Yeah, well, it cycles around, but when we have them to give away, we're happy to do it.
Exactly. I'm happy to have them. Thank you so much for having me as your guest host. It was my pleasure. Hopefully I can get a chance to do it again.
Okay, well, it's who knows? Anything's possible. And we really appreciate you all, the viewers out there. Thank you for voting. Like I said, we had over 2,000 ballots cast for the voting for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And we won't be back next Tuesday because it's Easter week. I have to do a lot of choir practices, and Rhonda's still on her assignment. But we'll be back April 22nd with another amazing episode of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.